Now, with my middle name being Zacharias, love this little man, Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and we all know that tax collectors back in the day weren't folks' favorite people. We all love tax collectors today. They're just good old folks. But Zacchaeus knew that Jesus was coming his way, and they say Zacchaeus, being short in stature, tried to kind of get in along the crowds, and he just couldn't find a place to sneak in and get along the roadside. So Zacchaeus ran ahead of the crowd, and he climbed up a tree, and he sat up on the branch. And sure enough, Jesus came by, and he called Zacchaeus down from the tree. And because Zacchaeus had taken the time to show up and make himself known, Jesus invited himself over for dinner. See, there's always food involved. There's always food involved. And Zacchaeus, one who knew that what he did was in some ways wrong, confessed before Christ, before God incarnate, what he did was wrong and how he was trying to make amends. And Jesus looks at Zacchaeus and says, today salvation has come to your entire home. Just because Zacchaeus was willing to show up and to be present, it made a difference, not just in his life, but for his entire family. You see, I think the two are combined. And family today means a lot of things. If we're a single adult, we are family, and we have family and friends, our parents, our brothers and sisters. If we're a family, married or not, with children or not, with spouses or not, this becomes our family, and we bring our families together as a part of the broader church family. And we show up even on those Sundays when part of our family doesn't want to be here. We show up, and as parents, we encourage and make our children show up. Because eventually, if they continue to show up somewhere along the way, it begins to sink in. We got to show up. We got to be here. We've got to be present. We've got to come. I've talked a lot about exercise, and a couple more of my friends are here this morning from boot camp, and our boot camp instructor will tell us every day at the end of the workout, don't forget tomorrow morning, show up. And then he also says, bring a friend. Show up and bring a friend. That's pretty good advice for us in the church, isn't it? We got to show up. Do you know why I show up for boot camp every morning? One, because I've said I like to eat. So if I got a chance to run, I think I told this on 4th, but some of y'all weren't here, that I ran a race, the corporate challenge, and one of the groups that were running were the folks from Waffle House, which is just kind of funny in and of itself when they got a team from Waffle House running in a road race. But all the corporations get together and they have fancy T-shirts, and the T-shirts from Waffle House said on them, I run so I can eat. That's my motto. I run so I can eat. But we show up because every morning that you show up and you gather around that group of people, it's real hard to slack off. And when you miss a morning, people miss you. Thus, you want to show up. That's the same way it needs to be here. We've got to show up week in and week out, because the more we show up, the stronger we become in our faith. The more we know about Christ and how he can change our lives, and how through us, Christ can change the lives of others. We show up for those hugs and for that fellowship and for that learning. We've got to show up. And I'm going to tell you what else we've got to do. We've got to bring some friends. Because I tell you, there's not a challenge that we face as the church at 360 Peachtree Street or the church universal that bringing a friend to church wouldn't help us to solve. Do you hear me? There's not a challenge that we face at 360 Peachtree Street or that the United Methodist Church or that the church universal faces that we can't solve if we show up and if we bring a friend. Because if we show up and if we bring a friend, then eventually they'll show up and they'll bring a friend. Before you know it, we got to put chairs in the aisles and make sure that the balcony is prepared. We got to show up. We've got to bring a friend. I found an article online from Christianity Today. And the title of the article is Waiting for Jesus to Show Up. Waiting for Jesus to show up. That's my fear. I think far too long we've sat around waiting for Jesus to show up. We sit around and we hang our heads and we wonder why nothing's getting done because we're waiting for Jesus to show up. This whole article is really written around the Advent time of year, and you can imagine waiting for Jesus to show up as the author's talking about Advent, and as we wait for the incarnation, for the birth of Christ. But I'm just going to tell you, we don't have time to wait till Advent. Jesus needs to show up now. And he writes, this is why we continue to drag ourselves to church and why we get up in the quiet of dawn to pray. It's why we clear our neighbor's driveway of snow, or in the South, maybe walk our neighbor's paper up to their door. It's why we volunteer at the food closet or spend an evening listening to the heartbreak of a friend. We put ourselves in places where God has been known to show up. In each of these acts, we are saying, okay, God, I'm here where you want me. Come, Lord Jesus. But here's what I've learned in my life, in my ministry. Every time that I've sounded the bell and I've asked for Jesus to show up, when I show up, I realize Jesus is already there. When I show up, I realize that Jesus is already there. For Jesus has said, where two or more of you are gathered, there I shall be also. Jesus has promised that no matter where we are, there he will be. In the time of our deepest heartache, he's there. At the moment of our greatest triumph, he is there. And everywhere in between, he is there. If we come to church on Sunday morning and we're 30 minutes into this service, and we're still waiting for Jesus to show up, something's wrong. Because I'm going to tell you the truth. When you turn off Peachtree Street on the Porter Place, he is already here, waiting for us to show up, waiting to see what it is that we can do.